Alright, so I'm fresh off my review of Halloween and The Thing, which was a bit shorter. Now we're going to move on to Amadeus. Oh shoot. Whoops. And this is my favorite part. I like reading my actual review. I wrote this, I think I wrote it today. Yeah. So I said rewatched. Great film. Definitely underrated it the first time, which I gave it a 9 out of 10, which I since have recanted. Great villain, great main character, a film about greatness and legacy. Like I said when Kobe Bryant died, it's not really death when you're remembered forever. That's legacy and immortality. One man, Mozart, sees immortality in his death, forever growing and memorialized as a genius and the greatest composer ever to live. The other, Salieri, sees himself fade into obscurity as old age sets in, forever eclipsed by his rival, Mozart. The film also deals with God, rewarding the vulgar and sinful Mozart with great talent, while the pious Salieri is left with inferior talent, despite praying for hours for music that will allow him to glorify God. Envy results from this and resentment. Salieri abandons his piety and goes against God. The film is complex in characters, stories, and structures. In structures, it's one of those rare films that makes something quote unquote boring interesting. In this case, it makes music interesting as a story, showing scenes of opera and using it to develop our characters, Salieri's awe with Mozart, and Mozart's brilliance, etc. The story is complex because it is a biopic that takes non-literal liberties with Mozart's death. Unraveling that truth is fun and tense. The characters' arcs. Oh, sorry. No, the characters. That's a typo. The characters are complex because Mozart is the hero. But definitely can be abrasive and flawed. Salieri is the villain, but you also respect his infatuation and respect for Mozart's talent. The acting is fantastic. Great direction, some great shots. The film has many iconic scenes, some iconic scenes, and lines that are very funny, like Too Many Notes. So, I really liked this film. I liked it the first time I watched it, but I definitely underrated it, and I thought that like the middle part could drag it sometimes, and on rewatching it, it definitely does. And if what I've found on Apple TV is there is no theatrical cut, at least as far as I could tell, for Amadeus. Like, it says theatrical cut, but when you press play, it's the director's cut. I couldn't figure it out. So it was 3 hours, but the theatrical cut is like 240. So I think the theatrical cut might be better because the middle part was too drawn out. But yes, let's like try to do a bit of a review. He won an Oscar for his performance. It was well deserved. Tom Hulce did an amazing job. He was nominated, but he probably should have won. He was hilarious. Where is the synopsis? Here you are. I'm gonna do like a. So the beginning opens with Salieri, who I think he tries to kill himself. He slits his throat, and he's moved to like a mental ward or whatever back in the day, and he's like visited by a priest, and he tells the priest his story. And basically Salieri grows up in a family where like he loves music, but his father like doesn't support him, and um, sort of is cold. And it contrasts with Mozart, whose dad loves him, and he goes all over Europe, and he's like a a childhood prodigy. Like, he can play blindfolded when he's like 4 years old. He can write music at like, 6, whatever. But then Salieri's dad chokes, and basically this sets Salieri on his passion. And he prays to Jesus, and he says, like, if you make me a great composer, I will, be the perfect model of a Christian. I'll be celibate, etc. Um, and yeah, so that sort of sets this movie up where Salieri is like has a moral code, and he thinks that if he does this, then God will reward him with talent. But then he meets Mozart and he sees that he's a profane sort of young adult, kind of like probably 20 or something. And he's very like childish and not dignified, and he makes crude jokes, and he's like a ladies' man. He drinks alcohol, etc. And there's a series of great scenes that set this up, like the famous scene with the Emperor, where Mozart comes in and he redoes Salieri's music in front of him and humiliates him, and this causes Salieri's rift with God. So Salieri renounces God and vows to do everything in his power to destroy Mozart as a way of getting back at God. So he kind of wants revenge on God. The king, it's the Emperor of Austria, so that's a mistake, commissions Mozart to perform an opera. And Mozart surpasses people's expectations, but this is a scene with too many notes, so they're not fully satisfied. And basically, Mozart is sort of into Salieri's love interest, but he can't really do anything with her because he's sworn to chastity. So Salieri's pissed off, and he starts scheming, and basically a bunch of stuff happens, but Salieri through the whole movie falsely presents himself as Mozart's friend, but behind his back works to destroy his reputation so he can't get any pupils. So he really is doing some bad stuff. Let's see. Oh yeah, like he tells the emperor that his daughter should not be trained by Mozart because Mozart will sexually harass his daughter because he's has done it before, but that's not even true. Salieri just made it up. Let's see. Okay, yeah, there's another scene where this is a really good scene. So Mozart is so proud, like he won't submit samples of his work to the emperor to sort of justify him being the tutor for his daughter. So his wife takes it behind his back to Salieri to like put in a good word with the emperor. But and this is the scene where Salieri sees that Mozart is a genius. Like he has only one draft of music and he has no copies, he has no like eraser marks. It's just all from his brain. And there's this meme, perhaps you've seen it on Twitter, where Salieri like drops the music with his eyes closed because he's so satisfied with what he sees. And Salieri says, like, you want your husband to get the job, you have to come in and perform certain, let's just say, and I'm just gonna say it, I like to keep my channel pretty clean, but he wants her to like have sex with him in order to get the job. So she comes back and she's willing to do this, but he completely stabs her in the back and like humiliates her after she takes off her corset. And his servant comes in and he's like, take this woman out, like she's crazy. So that was a good scene. Let's see. Oh yeah, and then he sends a maid to work in Mozart's house, who is a spy basically. and Mozart is working on a secret composition that he claims will revolutionize music in Europe. Salieri realizes Mozart is trying to create a band play, and then Mozart's summoned, but he convinces the king to allow him to do it, and this is another great scene. Then Salieri tries to sabotage the opera by imposing a fictitious royal order not to have ballet in the opera, which would cause Mozart to junk the whole thing, but the king surprises everyone by attending the rehearsal and approves of the whole thing. Salieri uses his influence to see that it's only performed 9 times and is only a moderate success. And I really like a line he says where he says that he made sure it wasn't played because it was so good he couldn't bear to see Mozart getting all the love. But he said that he went to every single one of the 9, which sort of sums up his character. He's incredibly bitter, and he wants to sort of destroy his rival's whole career and reputation, but he also genuinely respects him. There's not one one performance that Mozart has that he doesn't go to. So while what he's doing is despicable, it's sort of it's interlaced with this respect that he has for his rival, which is in some ways an honor for a dishonorable man that doesn't have very good intentions. The next opera is written upon Mozart's father's death is an absolute masterpiece. This is a great song called Don Giovanni, which is one of my favorite songs, actually. It was in Sherlock Holmes, but I love it. I think it's about death, but Salieri deduces that Mozart has poured his father's soul and his father's death into this opera, and this is what I meant when I said the structures of this film are very complex and unique. And what I mean is using opera to develop each character. So Salieri says that he can see that Mozart poured his father into this, and we see what he thought of his father, this imposing figure in black that's sort of grand and huge, but also terrifying. And it's a really nice scene. And then the film goes on. There's a lot of filler in this part. That's what I'm saying. The extra 20 minutes is probably too much, but at this point, he's in deep poverty. He's drinking. He's exhausted. Oh, wait, hold on. Okay, so this just skipped a huge part of this. Okay, so basically, Mozart and his father and his wife went to this party where they were all masks, Eyes Wide Shut, minus the naked people, but they were all in masks. And basically, Salieri sees this, and he sees Mozart's father in a mask because he takes it off at one point. So knowing this, after his father's death, Salieri approaches Mozart at his front door wearing the mask of his father and basically says write me a requiem mass, a funeral mass, I will pay you. So he's in deep poverty, so he starts to do it, but he's slow, and he's driven into poverty. He's slow to write it. He's drinking, and I think he's taking drugs. So he's really struggling, and it seems like he's dying. And his wife leaves from the stress. She goes to a retreat, and there's also a great scene with her mother where she's screaming at Mozart, and from the woman's screams, Mozart makes his next opera, which is another one of my favorite songs. I think it's called Opera of the Night, or no, Queen of the Night. It's a really amazing little song. It used to be in a video game I played called Empire Total War. It's a really cool little song. And so that's there. And at this point, Mozart is doing vaudeville composing where he faints, and Salieri is there watching his music because Salieri is always at all of Mozart's I keep wanting to say plays. They're not plays, they're like performances, musical with dancing. And essentially Salieri takes him because he passes out, and he takes him back to his apartment, Mozart's apartment, where he puts him on his bed. He's all, he's struggling. And basically, Mozart knows that he needs to finish the death opera to get this money from this guy. Salieri doesn't reveal that he was the man in the mask, but he says, "Let me help you." And this is the last part of the film, sort of the climax and the brilliance of this film. It's Salieri and Mozart, like I said, something boring, writing music, but them doing it together. And it's a beautiful scene where the Requiem Mass, the death mass, is written by Mozart on his deathbed with help by Salieri. Interlaced with this, at the same time, his wife misses him and says, like, "I'm leaving the retreat," goes in the carriage over the death mass. You hear it playing in the background. She's racing to see him. She comes in, has one last moment with her husband and her kids. Mozart dies. And then the movie ends with Lacrimosa, the end of the Requiem. If you haven't heard Lacrimosa, it's a very beautiful song. I'm sure you've heard it. Another one of my favorite songs. But the film ends with Lacrimosa and Mozart's corpse. And always a good sign of a movie is if it gets a little bit of emotion out of me, and it did. I have to say, it did. It was like a very touching thing to see, like, Salieri like had a chance to partake in like the greatness, like, and you could tell like he really enjoyed it, and there was like some aspect of him that was like regretting or recognizing the foolishness and stupidity of his actions trying to just destroy the man he admired so much. And like in this last moment, he gets to partake in the greatness, and yeah. The play ends with Salieri attempting suicide in a last attempt to be remembered, leaving a false confession of having murdered Mozart with arsenic. He survives, however, and his confession is disbelieved by all, leaving him to wallow again in mediocrity. And there's a great ending where he's wheeled through I'm just gonna say it, it's a hall full of retards, and he's like, "I absolve you of your mediocrity." And it's this hilarious scene where he's like playing the priest, and he's telling all these mentally disabled people, like, "I absolve you of your mediocrity," as if he's like a retard himself. Of course, that's just his self-perception. He's not a bad composer. It's just like he was eclipsed by a man that sort of achieved the legacy of never being forgotten, while Salieri is not largely forgotten. Although I would say, let's be honest here, Salieri was not forgotten, because we're talking about him right now. He was immortalized in this film as a great character. Obviously, there's liberties taken. It's not a historical documentary, but Salieri did end up achieving greatness, in my opinion, because we're still talking about him. So he was an interesting man, I guess, and fictionalized well in this film. But yeah, that was Amadeus. I remember watching this film 5 years back. I remember telling our band teacher, Mac. I can't even remember what his full name was, but we called him Mac. What was it? Not Macklemore. Let me see. Let me search his name up. Not professor, band teacher. Oh yeah, McElroy. That was his name. And I remember we were watching like all these musical movies, and we were like, we're gonna watch Amadeus, and I remember he was so like almost offended by the fact we would watch a movie that was like old. He was like, I just don't see why you'd watch that. I guess the concept of people liking movies was horrific to him. But no, he was a nice guy. He was just kind of weird. But yeah. 9.5 out of 10. That's been me, Sussy Boy, out.